We're live with the one and only, the honorable DJ Hilson. Straight talk with DJ Hilson. How you doing today, DJ?
I'm fantastic. It's always listen. This is a treat for me. It's always a pleasure when you host this show because I know you're a busy guy, and it's just always an honor. So thanks for taking some time, my friend.
And it's an honor that you allow yourself available to the public. We can't take that for granted, Muskegon. Not every prosecuting attorney office are getting the head prosecutor to be vulnerable like this, to take questions, unscript questions, as that from people like me and the general public. So we thank you for that. How you been doing, man?
I've been doing pretty good. Yeah, I've been doing pretty good. It's been busy since the courthouse kind of opened up in February, and it really hasn't stopped. So we've been kind of moving and shaking a little bit, and things are starting to open up even further. Meetings that were once virtual are now hybrid. So I'm spending more time now actually live and in person with people, which is kind of nice. We just did. I've been involved with Fresh Coast Alliance and our Shattering the Myths, which is a really an hour-long program that we go to the schools. We've been going to the schools with, and we've got some folks who have re-entered our community who are, basically kind of be able to tell their stories and really help kids understand the power of a choice. And that's really kind of the motto, is power of a choice and making good decisions. And we got back to doing that live in person. Our first event was last week. We were in North Muskegon. Tomorrow morning we're in Holton, and so we're finally getting back on the road and getting back into schools, and really excited about that. And so it's I mean it's still that new normal, but we're finally able to start doing things like that, things that we haven't been able to do for the last 2 years, and things that we hope are going to make a difference, not only for our young people, our students, but also for the community.
Right.
And I'm a big believer in the face-to-face type things. It's certainly Zoom makes things a heck of a lot easier and more convenient, but sometimes in certain situations that just doesn't deliver the message effectively where in person does. So I'm pretty excited about that. Getting back to that.
Okay, a lot of stuff, a lot of questions today. I know we just, but you can handle it.
Listen, I would expect nothing less from an expert like yourself.
Thank you, DJ. And a lot of homicides since the last time we had talked. Quite a few homicides in the last 2 weeks in our community. I don't even know where to start, so I let you start. It's all over the place. I don't know if you've ever seen it like this in such a short span.
Well, last year we had a little bit of a bout in the end of May, early June, where it seemed like we were dealing with homicides on a rather routine basis, and those from last year were somewhat connected. And over the course of the year, investigators in my office, we've done a really, in my opinion, really great job of trying to put some of those pieces together and ultimately work on charging individuals. And so those are moving in a good direction. These recent ones, certainly, you referenced, we had 2 in the city a couple weekends ago. We had 1 this past weekend. They're not related or connected at all. I know investigators were here in my office until right around 7 p.m. last night, working that case, and we seem to have caught at least we have some good information that may answer a lot of the questions that we initially had in this most recent one, and so that took a turn for the better last night. And ultimately, trying to work through, the issues that we always seem to be talking about, Paul, and we have these cases and some of those other ones where, it's that drives investigations. It's information that helps detectives, move on to the next step. And ultimately, it's that information that leads to hopefully me being able to make some charging decisions. And in the two city cases, that information has been, less than forthcoming.
DJ, can we go back to the one that happened in Muskegon Heights? I guess the most recent one. That was a young girl. I think she was
Yeah.
like 3 years old.
Yep.
Have there been any arrests in this case, or are people cooperating?
Yeah, so that was I was referencing that one. I apologize, Paul. I was referencing that one as it relates to the things that were happening last night here in the office. And we did make an arrest, not related necessarily to the homicide itself, but kind of indirectly related. The other Sunday, and the investigators were working that angle all day yesterday, which led to conversations that were taking place here in my office up until about 7:00 last night, and ultimately obtained some pretty decent information as a result of that. And I know they were working on it today based off of the information they heard last night. So I think we're heading in a pretty positive direction there. We'll just see how it unfolds. So that one seems to be kind of coming together. We've got some pretty good information, which is supporting some of the theories that detectives had leading up to that conversation last night.
And that incident happened like outside, right?
Yes. Yep. That incident did happen outside. It happened. The young female who ultimately lost her life was in a car, and both parties essentially that were present or involved were outside as well.
Wow. Was it Woodcliff? Not Woodcliff. Glen Oaks. The homicide that occurred in Glen Oaks. The last time I talked to Chief Lewis, he told me there were two victims. One succumbed to the injuries, and another one was in the hospital. Do we know what's the status of the second victim?
Last I knew, Paul, they were still in the hospital as of late last week. And I know that investigators were interested in talking again to that person. And again, it's unfortunate that we're having to go to some extreme in order to get information. And last I knew, we didn't really have any solid pieces of information that were kind of moving that investigation forward.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
But that's like at a standstill then.
yeah.
Wow. Do you believe there are witnesses?
Well, I mean, there's certainly a witness that's laying in a hospital bed, present during what was going on.
Could that person be claiming self-defense?
Well, ultimately, maybe, we need to know all that. And I don't know all the specifics, but that person also could have been just a person that was there, visiting or being with the victim in that case, the other victim in that case. And so could have some pretty good information as to who walked through the door, why they were there, and what led up to the ultimate shooting that obviously this person got shot too. So, and they're still alive to talk about it. And that's, I think, where we're running into a little bit of a brick wall.
Before we go into the other homicide, discuss stand your ground in Michigan. What does that mean? I know you talked about it before. Just refreshing people's memories on what does the law state in the state of Michigan on stand your ground?
Yeah, we sometimes call it the castle doctrine, in castle as in protect your castle. And so the way that it works here in Michigan is that if somebody invades your home or your castle, you do not have a duty to retreat. In other words, if you can reasonably articulate this fear of death or great bodily harm, injury, you have no duty to retreat before using deadly force. And that's kind of the same premise as stand your ground. We call it the castle doctrine here in Michigan. It's that really what it's about is do the circumstances rise to a level where you have a duty to retreat as opposed to, engaging in the use of deadly force?
Does that apply if you're visiting somebody else's house and you have your concealed weapon permit? You have a right to carry. Does that apply?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, again, all circumstances are unique and different, and I want to just put an asterisk to this conversation that people need to understand that, I don't want people running around saying, well, the prosecutor said, because ultimately it's the circumstances that lead up to the event that we have to take a look at and see if it conforms to the law. But again, if you're a visitor in somebody's house, and, for example, the extreme happens where somebody breaks in while you're visiting, my view of the world is that you would have, if the circumstances again are appropriate, you'd have every right to defend yourself just like anybody else in that household. And even though it may not be per se your house, it doesn't make any sense that one person doesn't have a duty to retreat, but because you're a guest, you have to retreat. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
And do you have a right to protect somebody else who is being victimized? For instance, you have a CCW permit, you're in the street, you're seeing someone being attacked. Do you have a right to protect that individual?
Yeah, we call
even if you don't know them.
Yeah, the law is we call it defense of others. Just like self-defense, there is an instruction in the law as it relates to defending a third party or defense of others. And so again, if the circumstances are such where you feel that someone is in a position where they're in trouble, either losing their life or suffering great injury, that particular protection may in fact kick in if you take action.
Questions or comments for DJ Hilson on 231-722-8338. You can post them here right on our Facebook feed or YouTube or IG or Twitter. We all over the place with this DJ Hilson.
The new Elon Musk Twitter?
Right. Well, he said he's gonna shut it down. Now that was a joke. He said, "Yeah, Elon Musk Twitter. It must be nice to just have billions of dollars just out there to just go buy something like for nothing. Like
it's kind of like being like Paul Billings, where you just you know what, today I feel like I'm gonna go and buy a social media platform. Twitter. Twitter seems like a fun one. Let's go write a check for $44 billion and call it a day.
I don't even think I want those problems.
No, listen, I'm telling you, I can't even imagine. I couldn't even keep track of all that. I mean,
yeah, and he's very hands-on, and it's amazing. Wow, to have that kind of capital just laying around. All right, the other homicide occurred on Emerald Street within the last week and a half or 2 weeks. Any leads on that case?
They had some early social media chatter that they were kind of following up on shortly after, and I'll be honest, I haven't had a chance to sit down with investigators and see where they're at with that. But again, it's sort of similar to some of the other one we were talking about. Information is the key. And I know that investigators do follow up on what I'll call kind of the street chatter, if you will. And every once in a while they may get an anonymous tip, but to me, if you have information on any of these, obviously my preference would be is that you contact law enforcement. But as we've talked about many times, and I think what we try to do when the media reports these events is that Silent Observer is alive and well here in Muskegon County, and it's on various platforms. I mean, still 72 Crime still works, but you can go online, Muskegon silentobserver.com, I think is the link, or there's an app. And again, just because you're doing it from your computer or your phone, and Big Rob sits on the board, so he's on the board with me for Silent Observer, and as he's proclaimed, it is truly anonymous. Whether you call it in, whether you email it in, whether you text it in, it's all anonymous. Nobody Nobody knows who you are. They just see the information. And what's nice about the online or cell phone text platform is that there is an opportunity to, let's say you've taken a picture or you've taken a video. You can upload all that online so that investigators not only get the typed information, but they can also look at any videos or photos that you're uploading as well. It's really, it's really a very nice system. And again, it's all anonymous. And the good news is, you know, when we have these quarterly meetings, we get the statistical updates, and people are using it. People are using Silent Observer. I mean, the tips every quarter are pretty significant. You know, if you don't necessarily want to be identified, all we care about really is the information. And as you've kind of put up on the screen here, all we care about is the information, and just provide us that information. Let the investigators use that so that we can move some cases forward and really bring some justice. Because whether it's, you know, self-proclaimed vigilante justice or, you know, just shenanigans, that's not what Muskegon County is all about. And we want to make sure we hold those accountable.
I want to say hello to Levon Overstreet, who's watching online. People are watching online, but they are not posting any questions for you to DJ. But I still got more. So
hey, listen, that's okay. You know, I've always enjoyed this format, even though I love being in the studio. I've enjoyed this format just because I know we do oftentimes get a lot of conversation through your Facebook page.
Right, and probably you on social media too. You probably do Facebook Live sometime,
huh? You know, I'll be honest with you. I've never done Facebook Live.
Oh wow.
I'm not very astute when it comes to social media. It's a little embarrassing. You know, my kids, obviously, you know, if you've got kids, and I've got 3 teenagers,
right?
They could run circles around me when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's. So you're not on Snapchat, and you're not on what's that, TikTok?
TikTok, no TikTok, no Snapchat. Barely Twitter, barely Instagram. I have an office Facebook page. I've got a campaign Facebook page and a personal Facebook page. That's where I do most of my work. Because I'll be honest with you, Paul, I don't have time for anything else. I mean,
right.
There's so much time and energy that you'd have to devote to. It's almost like a full-time job.
Right. I can imagine. So we talked about the case in the Glen Oaks. The case on Emerald. Did we mention that one yet?
We just talked about that. Yep.
Okay. So there was another homicide that occurred at one of the housing projects downtown.
Oh, yeah.
Ed Gray,
Jefferson Tower,
stabbed to death.
Yep.
What's the latest on that?
I'm glad that you asked that question because just was it yesterday? It was either yesterday or last week. It might have been last week. This last week, we ended up charging open murder on that case. That individual was arraigned, I believe, today on that new charge.
Wow. Do you know the name?
I remember the last name. I think it's I know the last name's Maniers. I don't know if it's Charles or not, but
Charles Manners. Okay, all right. Yes, I remember seeing that online. I wasn't familiar. Like I didn't know if that was the case connected. Oh wow, they both around the same age group.
Yes, in fact, both were residents of. I believe it was. I don't know if it's Jefferson Towers or Hartford Terrace. One of the two.
Wow. Okay. Then there was a dead body found in North Muskegon after, I guess, a house was on fire. And was it North Muskegon? Was it Muskegon Township, where the fire department responded to a big fire, and they found a dead body in the road? You familiar with that?
That one I'm not familiar with. No, I don't know.
And maybe it's not. Maybe they're not looking at it as a criminal case.
Could it? I mean, I'm assuming that if it hasn't reached the office here, and I don't believe it has, because typically when cases like that get to the point of making charging decisions, I'm usually involved in that conversation, and I have not had a conversation on that particular incident.
Okay, that's good. I think we covered, in
I
and
think
out.
the most recent ones, yes, I think you've touched them all. That I
Any unsolved ones that is, I mean, of recent that is troubling to you that hasn't been solved?
well, I mean, certainly any time that uh, an investigation kind of goes a little cold or stale without leading to criminal charges, that's always troubling, and it's always frustrating. Not only for, I mean, for my staff or my office, but also for investigators. I mean, investigators really they want to solve these cases just like anybody else, as bad as anybody else. Because when you start something and you put a lot of time, effort, and energy into an investigation, I mean, having it kind of run cold or stale is never a good feeling, and you never feel like you've accomplished something, and that's frustrating. All the conversations I've had with detectives over the years, they always talk about the cases that they haven't been able to quite put together and solve yet. So yeah, I mean, as far as anything that's sticking out in my head that is troublesome, nothing really. Nothing really is I guess is highlighted in my brain right now. But they're all, from my standpoint, they're all frustrating, because those are cases that we can't necessarily, at least at that time, provide some answers and closure to the victim's family. And that, again, I understand. I can understand why they would be frustrated with that, just like we are. And the way that I look at it is that these cases may stall for a moment or two, or they may run cold for a moment or two, but they're always ready to kind of put them back on the burner when that information comes in. Because I go back to what we were talking about originally. What drives investigations and what drives cases is information, and ultimately, what we typically like to think is that there's always going to be information that should lead to a potential individual who's involved. It's just a matter of who's willing to talk about it, and what else we can uncover that will help lead us in that direction.
Wow. Um, we're live with Honorable DJ Hilson. Tell me, I don't know if you talked to the prosecutor in Kent County, but there's a lot of pressure going on right now. That's I'm sure there's a lot of pressure on him, isn't it?
Yeah, I've known Chris Becker for quite a few years now. He, even when he wasn't the elected and he was the chief assistant, he would often attend some of our bigger conferences, and so I got to know him in that sense. And his wife actually is a local. She's from the Muskegon County area. And so that's kind of where our connection was. And certainly, I've had a couple of conversations with him since the officer involved incident that happened in early April. One, obviously, just to offer whatever support he needed from me or from anybody in my office, and to just make him understand that obviously we're here to help if he wants it, and here to bounce ideas off if he wants it. Because you're right. I mean, it's a heavy situation. There's a lot of pressure coming at him from all angles, and I have trust and faith that he'll make the right call. He'll do the right thing, and like I said, I've offered my assistance if he wants it, and I know some of my other colleagues that are on the west side of the state here have done the same. So he does have a support system, if you will, of other electeds willing to be there to help brainstorm or bounce ideas off of.
Other law enforcement people I've talked to off the record seems to believe that there has to be a charge. Do you think that also?
Well, look, I mean, I try to tread this very carefully, only because I've only seen what everybody has seen. I don't have the luxury of all the interviews that I'm sure were conducted and everything else. Certainly on its face, from the body cam videos and the cell phone videos that have been released, there are things in that video. I mean, ultimately the shooting itself, which are very troubling. Which certainly, if it were me reviewing it, there'd be a lot of things that I could point to that would lead to the direction of issuing criminal charges. Whether or not, how the other pieces and all the other evidence that's been collected up to this point fit, I can't speculate or answer that. But certainly from the little that I've seen that has been released by the media, or to the media, I should say. Yeah, I mean, there's some things in there that are troubling to me.
Does the officer pass matter when you come down to these incidents?
The past.
The past, yeah, like the past record of the.
Yeah,
of
I
the
mean,
victim.
I think that's. I think that's something that absolutely gets taken a look at. You look at any prior conduct issues or complaints. I mean, that has to factor a little bit into the decision making, because you got to know. I mean, there's when you don't have an interview of somebody. So in other words, when somebody doesn't sit down and provide you a statement, you have to look to see if you can kind of piece together any particular mindset or what you're dealing with, what you're dealing with as an individual when they're walking into a situation like this.
DJ, why does it take so long for the investigators to talk to the officer? It was at least a week they haven't talked to him. What kind of is that the protection they get? Is that the qualified immunity protection they get, or what?
No, it has nothing to do with qualified immunity. It has everything to do with being a citizen of the United States of America and the protection of the Constitution. It's no different than anybody else who might find themselves a person of interest or a suspect in a case. You can decide whether you want to give a statement or don't give a statement. That happens every day, not only here in Muskegon County, but across the United States. People who are quote unquote a person of interest or a witness or a suspect in any investigation have the absolute constitutional right to speak. They have the constitutional right to remain silent. They have the constitutional right to seek advice of counsel before they make any statements. And so it's not necessarily surprising that you would see this particular officer exercising those rights. And it has nothing to do with anything other than being a citizen of the United States of America.
But when you on a duty, there's not no obligation to talk to investigators.
No.
So then they don't have to bring him back as an officer. Then he pretty much saying he don't want to be an officer no more.
Well, certainly you got to separate. So you got to separate the administrative rules and policies and procedures versus the criminal realm. Whether or not this particular officer comes back on duty or has the ability to do that, that's a separate conversation and a separate set of due process and rules and procedures. Now, certainly if he's charged criminally, that probably ends the discussion right there. Obviously, if he's convicted of a crime, that probably ends the discussion right there.
So let me get this right, DJ. Shoot somebody, and your shift commander call you, say, "Hey, Billings, I need you in the office right now. We need to talk about what happened." You can say, "No, Sarge, I'm not talking to you."
Right.
And you still get paid.
Well, again, it just depends on those are department policies and procedures and how they handle those situations. Whether they get put on paid administrative leave, whether they get put on unpaid leave, those are all things that departments kind of figure out well ahead of any incident, right, and lay it out in a handbook or a policy and procedure manual that officers will get when they're hired on, so they understand what the rules are. And then ultimately, it's the administrators that that have to make those determinations, from the lieutenants, the captains, the chief, and then certainly there are procedures that the officer can take if in fact he feels or she feels that those decisions are not the right decisions. It's a separate form of due process, if you will, when it comes to the employment piece.
Got an online question from DeAndre Watson. Would you take the offer? Would you have took the offer for the Attorney General to take the case if it had happened here in Muskegon?
It's interesting. That's a great question. We, as electeds, this has been a topic of conversation at many different conferences and times that we've been together, just to have this conversation. And ultimately, what a majority of us have decided, and typically it's the ones that have the bigger offices, the solo office, because there are a lot of small counties that they have one person as their prosecutor. They don't have they don't have the luxury of assistants or support staff. But for those of us that have larger offices, we're all kind of the same voice, that the people of our various counties have elected us to do a job, and part of that is to evaluate and make charging decisions on cases, including cases involving police officers. Now, a lot of folks may say, well, you guys work in your partners all the time, and there's some truth to that yeah, ultimately law enforcement goes out, they do their job, they submit things to us that we review for charges, and that happens every day. All the various departments in Muskegon County are submitting warrant requests to my office every day that we're evaluating for criminal charges. And then we decide whether we charge or don't charge. So yeah, there is that working relationship. But at the end of the day, I believe it's my duty that if an officer breaks the law or is a suspect in breaking the law, I still have the same duty like I do in every other case, and that is to evaluate for criminal charges. And I would hope that the community would understand and have the trust and appreciation that I will make the right decision, that I will make the right call, that I will, if the circumstances are such that a police officer has in fact violated the law, we will charge them criminally. And in this office, and myself included, have in the past. We've charged officers with crimes when it rises to that level. And so from my standpoint, I certainly can appreciate the Attorney General in making those offers, but I don't stand on this platform by myself. My colleagues, for example, Kim Worthy in Wayne County, David Layton in Genesee, and now even Chris Becker in Kent County, those folks in the larger counties, we all believe that we have a duty and we owe it to the citizens that have elected us to take those cases and make those hard decisions and make those hard calls.
All right. Online comment from Julius Muhammad, who ran for city council in Muskegon Heights, said 10,000 fearless Muskegoners embarking upon a stop killing and conflict resolution tour of duty throughout our community. We're calling on fearless men and women to help make our community a safe and decent place to live. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I've had a few conversations with Mr. Muhammad, and he's quite a guy. Has a passion not only for the community but for young people in general, and certainly, a lot of what we're seeing these days is all about how do we handle and resolve conflict. And it seems to me that a lot of, the trend has gone away from the days of, not that I'm endorsing this idea, but gone from the days of, fist fighting to now, boy, if you look at me funny, I'm going to pull my gun out. I'm going to shoot you, which it makes, when you think about it and you start talking about reasons why this is happening, whether it's because, somebody's on a street they shouldn't be, or it's over a girl or a guy, or it's you looked at me funny, I feel disrespected. I guess for those folks, don't run for public office, because you get cross-eyed looks every once in a while, and you get things said about you every once in a while. Boy, if I had that attitude, I'd be in prison probably for the rest of my life. But to appreciate that there are peaceful ways and structured ways to resolve conflict that don't involve violence, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Part of my philosophy is the mediation restorative practices. I mean, I'm the president of the board right now of Mediation Restorative Justice. We implement a lot of those strategies in some of the programs that I run through my office. And certainly I'm a big believer in peaceful conflict resolution, because I've seen it done and it can be done.
Yeah. The impulse, man, it's kind of hard. That's one we gotta work on mentally. I think people have a problem with being disrespected publicly, and sometimes you take it to the extreme when you felt like you've been disrespected. But then there's also been cases, and maybe you could talk about this, DJ, where false accusation or a third party, meaning a woman, is involved. And can you talk about what percentage of those cases where you might have seen that it was a woman involved and she walks out being clean, then one of these guys are going to prison and one of these guys is dead?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've learned over the last, I'd say, probably 3 or 4 years is that there are the ancillary players, if you will, the indirect, not necessarily, maybe not directly involved, but indirectly involved. Those folks, we're starting to pay attention to a little bit more. I'll give you a good example. We learned over the course of the violence that was happening last year that a lot of the guns that were involved were being purchased by folks, sometimes females, who had clean records and could do that. And they were being purchased for the sole purpose of turning them over to people that couldn't buy guns or possess guns. And we have focused a lot of that investigation in looking at and going after those folks and sending a very strong message. Not acceptable. And ultimately, it seems like innocent behavior. But when you do that and you show a pattern of doing that more than once, like 4, 5, 6 times, and these guns are ending up in the hands of people that want to do evil with it, you're going to find yourself wrapped into an investigation and more likely than not criminally charged. And I feel very strongly about that. And so, to your point, Paul, that the indirect, kind of the outside the circle individuals, those are folks that we are now paying attention to. Those are folks that are going to get themselves in a heated, or a pickle, if you will, with the criminal justice system, because in my view of the world, you play a role in whatever the ultimate incident is. And so if you are treading in those waters, I would take a second to kind of think about that level of participation.
Wow. A few more questions, DJ. First of all, is there anything you wanted to say? Because I've been drilling you with a bunch of questions. And I know we only got a few more minutes left.
Hey, listen, man. No, this is why I've loved this show from the beginning. Is that I know early on we talked about. I mean, in the very beginning we talked about, well, do we want to kind of put an agenda together, an outline, and as it has turned out, and it has been very successful. We walk in with no agenda, with no outline, and it's really what's happening now, or hey, let's talk about this, and that always works. And I appreciate that. I'd much rather just kind of work, because I'll be honest. If I don't know an answer, I'm going to tell you I don't know. I'm not going to guess or speculate.
All right. We got an online comment from Benita Threadgill. Said there are individuals that have information. Please don't underestimate the power of any tip of lead that can combine to larger leads to help solve some of these crimes.
Amen to that. Amen to that. That's why that silent observer is so very, very important. I'm telling you, it has led, in more cases than not, when the right tips are coming in, it has led to very solid leads, very solid information. Sometimes the finding of folks, sometimes it leads to the charging of folks. And one of the benefits is that silent observer does pay money. It does pay for tips, especially if that tip leads to the arrest of an individual who's involved in one of these incidents. And again, I'm not just saying that to say it. We actually see the reports in these quarterly reports, and Big Rob can back me up on this, that there's money in the bank account specifically designed to pay out tips. And there's a separate committee that reviews and pays tips. Huh. Speaking of, there's Big Rob himself.
He's working on his day off, DJ. He's off today. He's working, man.
I tell you, the big fella sometimes comes through in a pinch. That's for sure.
231-72-CRIME, 231-72-CRIME. Gangs. Where are we at on gangs? Is it happening? Is it starting to go down, or are they getting more formalized? Does it exist here in Muskegon?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this on previous shows, and certainly I think there are individuals who affiliate with what I'll call as neighborhood, I'll call them gangs, and whether they try to affiliate with some of the more nationally recognized names. I mean, I'm sure that's happening a little bit too, and but I don't know. Certainly, we're not at the level we are at the big cities, like Detroit, like Chicago, like Los Angeles. We're not even close to that level.
Okay.
But do we have some folks that they'll come up with clever local names, and the beauty of some of the investigative tools that we have, including at least one of the units that we have that specifically look at all our non-fatal and fatal shootings here in the county. We've got a really good intelligence network as to who is where, who's claiming what, and this, that, and the other. And it's pretty amazing the level of street intelligence that this particular unit has, and how useful it is when it comes to unwinding and unraveling maybe some of the connections that a shooting victim might have, and why they may have been a target, or why a particular house or a particular area may have been a target. We know a lot walking into something like that just because of the intelligence that have been developed over the years. And so, yeah, do we have some what I'll say loosely organized gangs? Yeah, we do. I mean, but again, it's certainly not on the level that our major cities see. But any gang violence is not acceptable, and certainly we have been working over the last several years to sort of try to break some of that up. But it's just like the drug world, right? When you start taking care of some of the mid-level managers, if you will, there always seems to be somebody looking to make a name for themselves, and that's why I spend so much time working in schools and truancy and being a part of after-school programs, so that the next level, if you will, of young people find different alternatives than street life. And so it's like this big network of trying to dismantle, and you're doing it from all different sides and all different levels.
Right. Big Rob says he sit on the tip board. He'll make sure you get paid.
He does. Money. That's right. Big Rob does sit on the tip board. So you want to grease somebody's skids, man. Big Rob.
DJ, before we go, the federal government has not made marijuana legal, and I don't think they have not expunged those who have been guilty of marijuana and federal crimes. What are your thoughts on that? Because there are quite a few people in our community who have these federal crimes. They see their friends who got state crimes now getting these things taken out of their criminal background. They're able to get other jobs now. What are your thoughts on this, and how this holds the community back?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it's probably worth some conversation, because at least I can speak as it relates to some of the policies of the Western District here. So the federal district that covers a lot of the lakeshore area and a little bit inland. They all take their cues from Washington, D.C., from the Attorney General, he or she himself or or she. And ultimately, the policies are driven by the upper echelon, if you will, in the DC area, and that's what kind of drives the U.S. attorneys in their various offices in the districts that they serve. And it seems like for the longest time, the issue of marijuana as it relates to the street level stuff, the feds won't touch to begin with, and they're only interested in anything black market. And again, even under state law, once you get past a certain amount, it's still a crime, regardless of whether it's legal or not legal. And so, there's still some level of enforcement. It's not, it's not all everyone for everything kind of thing. So, but can the feds kind of catch up a little bit? Probably, because I think most offices are not doing much enforcement of it anyways. And so there probably needs to be a relook at what's going on, and whether that's Congress making the ultimate decision and passing a law, or there's policies in place that maybe address some of those prior convictions that you're talking about. But it doesn't seem to be a topic of interest, at least that I've seen or heard.
Last question, I guess. Can ex-felons have a rifle at home?
Ex-felons have a rifle at home. Well, so
legally,
possession, yeah. So, possession of a firearm, felon in possession of a firearm. So if you have a felony on your record, it doesn't matter where you possess that weapon in order to be potentially criminally liable for that particular criminal charge. Possession is possession. Your home doesn't protect you from that.
What if you're married and your spouse has a weapon?
What's interesting is that possession, the way it's defined as either, you physically have something in your hands, or pockets, or you have the right to access and control. That's also the legal definition of possession. So in that circumstance, regardless of who owns it, because ownership doesn't matter, if you have the ability to have access and control of it, you are, again, opening yourself up to criminal liability.
So how does a couple, say like a woman has a permit to carry,
yep,
marries a man who has a felon, is an ex-felon, they're married, she need protection, maybe they got kids. How do they do that legally and provide that protection they need?
Very, very, very difficult. Very difficult. Because again, it just depends on how that person.
In a safe? Keep the gun in the safe?
Yeah, I suppose you could keep the gun in the safe and do your best to not allow the felon, if you will, to have access. And maybe that's a fingerprint safe where there's only one set of fingerprints that opens up that safe, and it's not his or hers that has the felony conviction. There might be some merit to that, but it's very, very difficult. And it's an unfortunate circumstance. But and again, law enforcement isn't going out there looking for that kind of stuff, but circumstances could happen where they're involved, and next thing you know, that's being discovered, and now we've got to make decisions as to whether or not that person truly had access or didn't have access to it.
And I'm not blaming you. You don't write the laws, but
I don't.
but shouldn't a guy a woman that's been free maybe a long time from the criminal justice system, been out of prison 15, 20 years, turn their life around. They're Malcolm X. They turn their life around.
Yep.
How can they protect themselves when these guys on the streets are now carrying, military weapons?
Yeah, there's still a process. So that felon in possession statute, the way that it reads is that if you're convicted of a felony that has a penalty of 4 years or less, unless it's a specified felony, and there's a list of what is considered a specified felony. So if you've been convicted of a felony that's not specified, and example, some of the specified felonies are if you've got another weapons, let's say you've got a CCW conviction or you've got an ADW conviction, so as long as you don't fit into that category, there still is a process for you to go through the court system and get your gun rights restored. So there is an avenue under the right circumstances that someone can petition the court to have their rights restored.
Go through the courts. Get your attorney. Okay.
Yep.
DeAndre Watson said the president commuted 70+ prisoners today for drug sentence. Thanks, DeAndre, for the information. Online from Candy Richardson. The murders go unsolved here for years. Do they still follow up on leads when the cases are cold?
Yes. The quick answer to that is yes. And I've seen, I've been a part of it. I've seen it. That again, when information rolls through and it all of a sudden, for example, one of the scenarios that is not uncommon is somebody gets kind of caught up in they catch a case, and next thing you know, they've got information that they want to talk about all of a sudden. They're doing it usually not out of the kindness of their heart, but they're doing it in hopes to benefit themselves. But that's a lot of times when old cases get reopened because people have information, they kind of hold on to it, and then they use it hopefully as a potential to lighten their sentence, bond out of jail, whatever the case is. And obviously we listen and we know whether the information is good or bad, or if it needs to be followed up on. And we do. Detectives do. There is no case that ultimately does not get attention if information is provided on that case.
All right, PJ, man, you done a great job, man. I didn't prep him a single question, y'all. And he answered every question. One comment, there was a lady that wanted to meet with you about something, and I text you about her, and she and her son had got into some trouble.
Yep.
And you met, without saying her name, you actually met with her.
I did.
And she was very satisfactory with y'all meeting.
Yep.
I just want to say that to you publicly, that you keep your word.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. I appreciate you reaching out, and we had a very pleasant conversation. Obviously, we settled some differences, and ultimately, it was a good conversation. So I appreciate that very much. And the way that I view the world again is I try not to shy away from anybody. I've got an open door policy, and people call and leave messages. I call them back. And talk to them, and whether we are agreeing on something or we agree to disagree, ultimately I think it's my responsibility to do that, and that's just the way it goes. And so I appreciate the comment, and like I said, it ended up being a very very good conversation.
Have you endorsed anybody for judge?
I've been asked, a couple of folks have asked, and I've decided to kind of sit on the sidelines for a couple of reasons. One, ultimately, I don't know that it's necessarily my place to make endorsements. Two, whoever wins, I have to work with those folks, and I don't really want people to be sore because of that. And so for me, I'm just going to, like everybody else, kind of watch and wait and see how the dust settles in this election.
There you go. Appreciate you, DJ.
Appreciate you, my friend. As always, great conversation, man. And time flies. Every time it just flies.
Yeah. And I had 10, 20 more questions for you. So I'll wait till next time.
That's right. Save it for the next time.
All right. God bless you, man. Have a good week. Okay.
You too, my friend. You too.
All right. Take care.